Thank you. And it's a real treat to be in your country. The 27-hour trip, however, was a little challenging. And being an older guy, adjusting to the jet lag took me a number of days, but it was in such a wonderful area to enjoy part of your country and share in some of the uniquenesses of your culture. Interesting to hear that a lot more space in the hotel has been devoted to a bar. There's something that we have a lot in common. In America, we have a lot of bars in America, and glad to see that the Australians share in that activity. We have so many things in common, actually. We have a common language. Most of the words I understand that you speak, and I feel that it's enough of the language that I can relate to and appreciate. You know, in our country, in the United States, when we hear people from Australia speak, we think you have such a fantastic accent. And so I was saying that to some of the people that were serving us at the restaurant, and they said, we don't have an accent, it's you folks that have the accent. So everything is in the eyes of the beholder and a perspective. Something else that we admire in you, and I think we share, is the can-do attitude and your pioneering spirit. I think your country is also known for rugged individualism. I think we in America feel that is a part of who we are as well. Your love of sport and the appreciation of good food and wine. So we have a lot of things, and that's not by any means an adequate description of the most important ones, but something else we share in is the fact that we are sort of at a same moment in time. Australia has come a long way in terms of its life-saving efforts, and I think a lot of that has to do with your conference here, sharing, learning from each other, getting some ideas, and basically building around the things that make most sense from you, but learning from other people that are trying different approaches and still receiving excellent results. We believe that you have a nation of about 22 million people. In America, we have about 30 million. Your save rate countrywide is about 53%. That's the number of animals that leave the facilities and the rescue programs alive versus the total number of animals that are taken in. Another way of looking at that is the number of deaths per 1,000 people. You can see that we are reasonably close in terms of our save rates and our deaths per 1,000, and I think that might mean that some of the things that we're doing in the United States has some relevancy here to what you're doing in Australia. When we talk about deaths per 1,000, that's the number of animal, dog and cat deaths per 1,000 human population, and I've already tried to explain the save rate. In America, we think that saving all the healthy and treatable dogs and cats in the United States is doable by 2015. It's not only doable, it's not only possible, but it's probable, and I want to share with you some of the reasons why we think we are so optimistic that this will be done by 2015 and quite possibly before that. In the United States, we are killing about 3 million dogs and cats per year. That's a horrific number. That's something that we should be ashamed about and disappointed with, and feel that it's something that shouldn't be happening. When we talk about the 3 million dog and cat deaths, we break that down into healthy, treatable, and unhealthy, untreatable animals. So the number of animals that are being killed in America that we think cannot be adopted fall into two categories. Those that are suffering from incurable conditions like cancer. Their suffering cannot be alleviated or relieved, and it is truly a merciful end that we give the animals, just like we would do for ourselves at the end-of-life experience or the suffering for an incurable and painful ailment. The other is the dogs and cats that are killed that are potentially public health dangers. These would be dogs that have rabies, or animals that are considered vicious and are unsafe on city and community streets. So to save the 2.3 million healthy and treatable dogs and cats, we need to adopt out 4 additional dogs and cats per group per week, or 200 dogs and cats per year per organization. There are 4,000 animal shelters in our country and 8,000 non-sheltered rescue groups. That's 12,000 organizations supported by volunteers, supported by foster homes, supported by a legion of dedicated and committed shelter workers that are trying to save our best friends and our family members on 4 legs. We've come a long way in the United States. In 1970, the country was killing 24 million dogs and cats a year. We had a save rate of 19% and the deaths per 1,000 human population of 115. Now, the numbers that I'm going to give to you, and I hope, the reason I asked Joy if we could be early on in the program is because when we give you numbers, your eyes sort of glass over and you sort of fall asleep. And when I see people nodding off into their coffee cups, you know, it's quite concern for me because I know that I haven't done my job. But I'm going to give you some numbers because I think it's relevant to where we are, where we've come from, and where we want to go. But when you're looking at save rate or deaths per 1,000, this is just an indicator of progress being made. None of the numbers that I've provided to you or other numbers that I could share tell the true story. Because in some communities, the save rate is rather bad, but the only animals I take in are the incurables, the animals that are not savable, the animals that are truly in a merciful situation that need an end to their life. The deaths per 1,000 also is an interesting number because the deaths per 1,000 has a lot to do with what is the size of the population. So when I'm talking about how well a community is doing, we look at it as much like a pilot would in looking at all the dials on the dashboard in an airplane. You know, if he only looked at the altimeter, you know, how high are we, and didn't care about what the gas gauge said, there might be a problem. You know, if he only looked at the airspeed and he really didn't care about how high he was flying, that might be a problem. You know, so don't take any of these numbers as the end-all answer, but they are sort of an indicator and a way of trying to get a handle on where we've come from, where we're at, and where we want to go. Something that I find amazing in America at this point in time is that while we are in the midst of the worst recession of our time, the country has not abandoned its love for animals. We actually have fewer dogs and cats being surrendered at shelters. We have more animals being adopted, and therefore the death rate continues on the decline. Now, some people say that is not intuitive because we have a lot of unemployed people in America. 14 million people are out of work. We have a 9% unemployment. People are losing their homes because the houses are underwater. So we are having foreclosures and therefore animal displacements. But in spite of all of that, we have fewer animals coming into our shelters nationwide. We have fewer animals being killed, more animals being adopted. So people ask, well, why? Well, to me, part of that explanation is we love our pets. And in times of stress, in times of personal turmoil, sometimes the best comfort we can get is from our furried friends who only ask to love and will give love beyond measure. They are there for us, they are there with us, and they provide a lot of relief to our personal anxieties. And it is comforting for me, who is a believer in that. By the way, you will probably take from my presentations somewhat of a personal perspective that I'm an eternal optimist. I believe in our public, I believe in what communities can do, and I believe in the love of animals. And I think we have used that idea in building our strategies. And what I want to share with you this morning in my presentation is some of the reasons why I think our strategies are being successful. We're going to talk about some model programmings, a marketing strategy, the importance of shelter medicine, and touch on transparency and accountability. I'll talk more on transparency and accountability Friday morning, but I'd like to give you a brief overview of that concept as well. In the United States, we have some very wonderful models of successful operations. You can see from this chart, you probably don't recognize the cities or the counties or even the various parts of our country, but represented on this slide are small communities, very, very large communities like New York, which has over 8 million people. We have the southern part of our country, the northern part of our country, the eastern part, the western part. We have the rural and the suburban and the urban. And we have a smattering of different kinds of demographics. Highly diversified communities like New York and San Francisco with very homogeneous communities in part of the Southland. One of the key things that we're excited about is something called the Shelter Pet Project. If you haven't seen the website on the Shelter Pet Project, let me encourage you to go to the shelterpetproject.org. This is a campaign that we started just a couple of years ago, and it's a $200 million free advertising campaign across America promoting shelters and rescues as the first place to adopt. When we decided to launch this $200 million program with the assistance of the Humane Society of the United States, the Ad Council, and one of the predominant international advertising agencies, Draft FCB, we wanted to do some research about who should be our target. We find out that there are about 14 million people that have adopted from shelters and rescues and are advocates that these are the best places to get your companion animal. 14 million people have already decided that the shelters are the best place to go, the only place to go, and they are fans. We have 41 million people who have indicated that they are going to get a pet this year. They're fans of getting a pet, but they haven't decided where. They don't know if they're going to go to a puppy mill. They don't know if they're going to go to a breeder. They don't know if they're going to go to a shelter, but they are going to get themselves a pet. 17 million of those 41 people, because they haven't made up their mind yet, are our target. If we can convince 2.3 million of those 17 million that will adopt an animal this year, we will guarantee that all the healthy and treatable dogs and cats of America have a loving home. In 2004, 21% was the market share of animal shelters and rescues was 21%. Today, that number is like 27%. So we have radically increased market share. If we can convince the American people, but in your case, the Australian public, that shelters and rescues are the best place to go, just through market share alone, we can end the euthanasia of our family members on 4 legs. We can cherish and enjoy and benefit as a nation, as shelter workers and rescue volunteers, what is important, near and dear to our hearts. There's many good programs going on. I know you have somebody from Reno, Nevada that's part of your program. They are doing a phenomenal job in marketing their especially challenged dogs and cats. And if you don't get that information during your conference, we'd encourage you to get it from the Maddie's Fund website as well, which talks about some of the best advertising campaigns and public service announcements that are going on throughout the United States to draw attention to the wonderful animals that we find in our shelters and municipal agencies and rescue organizations. So marketing is a big deal. We've got to reach out to our public to get them to understand what we have to offer. And we did something very small in California called the Adoption Campaign. And we had a 2-day adoption event. And in that 2 days, we adopted out more than 2,000 dogs and cats into loving homes, which represented about 5 times more adoptions than these 43 shelters and 76 rescue sites do in a normal period for a due date period. So they, on average, were adopting out 50 dogs and cats in 2 days, which represents 25% of what needs to be adopted out over the entire year to save all of our healthy and treatable dogs and cats. We think that shatters the myth in America that there are too many pets and not enough homes. What is the stumbling block in the United States? It's not the fact that there are too many animals. It's the fact that we haven't marketed them well enough so that people can find the love of their life at our animal shelters and rescues. And people don't adopt because the animals are older or they have illnesses and injuries. In America, in the initial parts of that 40-year period, it was relatively easy to find homes for the cutes and cuddlies. But only until recently have we focused on the old and uglies. And as I go through the aging process, the old and uglies become more and more important. Because even though we might be advanced in years, we still have something to contribute. And some of the best experiences are the times we have with our animals as they've lost some of that energy of being the puppies and kittens, but take on some of the tranquility and some of the tenderness of being more mellow, more relaxed, and just want to spend time in your lap or licking your hand or cuddling up next to you on the couch. Another component for our success going forward is shelter medicine. 10 years ago, there was only one shelter medicine program in the United States. There's 28 veterinary colleges, and now 24 have adopted the introduction and the integration of shelter medicine into the veterinary students' curriculum. We think that's terribly important because while a lot of veterinary students are dedicated to companion animals, it's a unique challenge to be in an institutional setting with high densities, trying to avoid the contamination and contagion while the animal is there, and then to fix those that have the curable conditions, those that are sick and injured and poorly behaved. All of our energy right now in this next few years is going to taking care of the sick and the injured and the poorly behaved. When I'm talking about that in America, a lot of people think that I'm talking about the shelter worker, but I'm really talking about the four-legged furred friends that are looking for a loving home. The shelter medicine program in the United States have developed important protocols for animal handling, the importance of vaccine, daily rounds, and the treatment of things like URI and ringworm and parvo, etc. So we are now blessed with a cadre of students who have had the specialized training to understand what they can do to help us with our unique challenge of taking care of those pets who have been discarded by the public, but just need a little extra time, a little extra help, and some professional expertise to overcome their ailments. And once they have been given back to us, I think they know that they have been given a reprieve and that they can enjoy their life with us, and they benefit from, we benefit from that extra love that they are so capable of giving. We also are strong believers in transparency and accountability. The Maddie's Fund organization participated with 18 other important organizations in the United States in developing something called the Asilomar Accords. And like I said, that will be part in more detail on Friday. But when organizations come together with a common interest of trying to reduce the number of animals killed, you start talking about how do you report information and data and statistics that allow you to do your better job with your organization, that allow people in the community that care about what you're doing to evaluate how well you're doing it, and if you're ahead of the curve, benefiting from that, if you're behind the curve, how they can help you do a better job. And we think the spirit within the people is the primary and most beneficial motivating factor to saving animal lives. So by publishing data and providing accountability, we think we can radically move our cause forward in accomplishing our objectives. Something that Maddie's Fund has recently also published is called a comparative database, so that organizations and communities can look at comparable size, comparable type organizations in various parts of the country to find out where some of the best practices are, to find out where there is similarities, where there are ideas that they might want to use in developing their own strategy to try to improve their life-saving work. All of this comes together to basically do what heretofore has been considered, if not impossible, improbable in our lifetime. I'd like to introduce to you Heidi. It's not the woman, it's the little dog, who came to us 17 years in advanced age. Her caregiver had decided that because she was old, that it was time for her life to go. And she took it to her private veterinarian to ask that the pet be euthanized. And the veterinarian did all the blood work and everything and says, this little dog is perfectly healthy. True, she is blind. True, she is deaf. True, she is 17 years old. But she is perfectly healthy and just needs somebody to fall in love with her. She found that person with a hospice nurse who reached out with her heart as well as her hand to say, whatever time we have left, we will share it in love. Whatever time we have will be in joy, and whatever time we have will be for the benefit of us and everybody else. So Heidi is now ensconced in a loving home, doing a wonderful job with our hospice care nurse and enjoying life to the fullest, although she is deaf, she is blind, and she is advanced in age. Just because we're older, just because we're not as cute and cuddly as in a former time, does not mean we don't breathe that loving spirit into our hearts, into our homes, and into our communities. And you are the lifesavers. You are the people that every day do heroic deeds to find animals loving homes. And if you were not there, these animals wouldn't have a chance. These animals wouldn't have the advocate, they wouldn't have the skill, they wouldn't have the commitment. And so we are all indebted to you for the great job that you've done and the work that you're going to do and the information you can take from this conference to basically move forward. And I want to give my personal applause to each and every one of you for being the lifesavers of Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. And we'll look forward to some question and answers with Richard after morning tea, because the original plan was that we actually are a little bit in advance, so we could probably fit in a couple of questions now, but the plan was that we would have 3 speakers coming from 3 different countries and then come back with questions after morning tea and have a bit of a panel up here. So I don't know whether Robin Kippenberger's here yet from New Zealand. She was flying a little bit later and is supposed to be here by about 9 o'clock. So that meant all 3 of us could be here after she's finished at morning tea to respond to questions. Yeah, I might just... would anybody like to ask a question quickly now, Richard? Okay. Are you there, Silvana? No. Denise, could you just get the microphone and... Thank you. So, Tim, you wanted to ask a question? Hold on.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just for the benefit of everyone here, perhaps less familiar with Maddie's fund, whether Richard would perhaps give the attendees a bit of a background to how Maddie's fund started and the work that it's been doing, just for a bit of context.
Yes, you can do it from there. That's turned on, I think, John, is it? Yep. You can stay there if you want.
You're talking about our San Francisco experience? And well, Maddie's Fund is the largest contributing dog and cat rescue group in the world. Our benefactor has given us $300 million, and he plans to grow that to $1 billion in the next few years. And that generosity is given to community collaborations, building rescue efforts to achieve what we call a no-kill community status. We don't call the various organizations no-kill. We call them adoption guarantee groups. But the effort is to try to save all the healthy and the treatable animals. So that accounts for a large portion of the donations given by Maddie's Fund to communities. In New York, we're giving them about $24 million over a 7-year period to have an adoption guarantee for all the healthy and treatable animals. We also invest in shelter medicine. We are the largest investors in veterinary colleges in the United States to establish this specialty, to have the talent, skill, and professionalism for treating the treatables. And then we also heavily invest in transparency and accountability, in data collection and data reporting to involve the community in basically building a safety net of care. Collaborations are a big deal to us, and we're going to talk more about that on Friday. So we believe that no agency can do it by themselves, and that we need the municipalities, we need the rescues, we need the shelters, we need the veterinarians, we need everybody that's an animal lover to be part of our army, because there is a crisis as long as one dog and cat dies that needs a loving home. And so Maddie's Fund is investing in trying to create that no-kill nation. But we are just one of many. It's truly a collaborative effort. PetSmart Charities in the United States is also a major donor to animal welfare. But the good work that's being done on the ground, the people, the boots on the ground, you folks, are the people that are really the miracle workers that are accomplishing all the goals. In San Francisco, we didn't have the Maddie money, and we were able to achieve our efforts by realizing that collaboration was the most important thing to do, because without all of us working together, we couldn't get the job done by ourselves. And that meant putting aside our personality differences, our organizational differences, and our flag. This is probably unique to America, but not all the animal groups get along. You'd think it was wild cats having a feast or something. And so the idea of trying to build collaborations was the task. And by sharing information first, we established a degree of trust. And we recognized that this was a community-wide issue, and not one organization was the hero and not one organization was the villain, that we all had to work together. But working together is not easy. When I would sit down with my counterpart at Animal Control to talk about what steps we needed to take, you can imagine from the presentation that I've given to you, I really don't have any opinions. I'm super easy to get along with. It's obvious to me that if I have a statement that they should agree with it, But for some reason, this other person saw the world a little bit different, and we had to work out our differences because there was nothing that could stand in the way of one more dog and cat dying because we couldn't talk to each other. There is nothing that can justify a dog or cat being killed because we can't speak to each other and resolve our differences. And once you get to that point of understanding, it's amazing what can come out of a mutually beneficial relationship.